So going back over this vehicle, it's a 2014 Hyundai Elantra with 133,066 on the clock. And the problem it was brought to me for is that the AC is not cold. And like I said, the first thing that I saw when I looked at it, is the flapping paint and plastic down there, indicating that, and the two-tone fender. I'm not sure if it'll show up on camera or not, but that's a very white front fascia with an off-white fender. The paint doesn't match up. It probably doesn't show up on this camera, but I can see it with my eye. And what that tells me is this vehicle's been wrecked. And if you look at the headlights, one headlight is much shinier than the other, that being the passenger side. So that tells me that one's been replaced. And more than likely the radiator was pushed back and the fan was locked down and burnt up. While the key was on, when they pulled everything out, they didn't bother to change the fan or check its operation. The fan motor itself was shorted out. I checked that. I showed you that earlier. The compressor is not a standard compressor. That clutch is engaged. Oops, get that light on there. That clutch is engaged all the time, but when you look down there when it's running, you can see the whole clutch hub turning, but the center bolt does not turn. And you turn the engine off and check it with a ratchet and a socket, the bolt won't turn, indicating that the compressor shaft is locked up. There are two wires going to the compressor, a green one and a black one. The black one has a ground on it. The green one has 10.47 volts on it, which is going to be a pulse width modulated signal. It goes to a control solenoid rather than a clutch. Draws less current, makes it for a variable displacement compressor for more fuel efficiency while still delivering coolness. And as I showed earlier, they had a wire tied in there to try and keep the fan working because they didn't know what was going on. Wound up botching things up, and now they got to have replaced the fan assembly and the compressor and the condenser and flush lines, and probably change an expansion device out as well. And we're also going to need to replace a relay over here because they boogered that up pretty good too. I did show you that I took the one out of the rear window defogger and I put it over there for the fans to be able to check that. We got to get one and put it back in that spot, or just get two new ones for the cooling fan and be done with that, and the leftover one goes back in the rear window defogger. I'm going to have to do a little bit more checking to see what the stats should be. But testing the wire down at the compressor. I'm getting 10.47 volts. The other wire shows nothing when I'm attached to ground, but when I move my ground lead over to the battery positive post of the alternator and recheck it, I'm getting 12.04, and see it's got a negative in front of it. That just means the leads are reversed. So we do actually have a ground there. The other one's got 10.47 volts on the positive side, and this is going to be a pulse width modulated signal, so I'm going to assume that is okay. I was hoping that I could turn that signal off and on with the scan tool, but the only thing I see is compressor relay, and that doesn't seem to make any difference. I'm going to look at this some more and make sure there's nothing in there that says solenoid for the AC compressor. And I do not see one. So we're going to assume that is the proper signal coming to the compressor. And I'm going to get this thing cranked back up here in just a second and show you that the front hub of the compressor is turning, because it should, because it's locked in and it doesn't engage and disengage. But the bolt on the front of the compressor that goes through the clutch, I think you might be able to see it down there. if I can get it in focus, it does not turn when the rest of the clutch is turning. Well, I was able to get my 8mm short socket and ratchet on there, and the compressor's locked up. So what we have here, this car was accident damaged. You can see the paint peeling on the front. Somebody put it back together. They did not fix the cooling fan properly. The cooling fan stopped working, and then it locked up the compressor. A very small issue went very, very bad. It's going to cost somebody a lot of money. I wish I could do something about that. What I'm going to do is, this is a good relay that was in there, and what I'm going to do is, I've looked here and I've got these various relays in this fuse box, and looking at the fuse box legend, this one here is for the rear window heater. That one right there. So I'm going to take that one out and put it up here, use my scan tool to energize the two relays, and see if the computer can still control both relays and power both legs of that cooling fan. Use a little gentle persuasion, hopefully. There we go, got that out. Put that back in. Okay, what we gotta check is the blue and the white wires coming off that plug down there. And one of them's high and one of them's low speed. So let me get everything hooked up here. Test light is hooked up. Connector's pulled up. You can't see which color is what, but should be able to do a quick test here. This is the high-speed relay test. I'm going to start it, and I just heard the click. You can hear that relay clicking on and off, so I should get pulsing power at one of these terminals. There we go, we got pulsing power, because it will go off in just a second. There we go. So the computer can still control it as long as there's a good relay in there. That'll be okay. So now I'm going to back out of the program, and I'm going to check the low speed. I'm going to hit start, and I heard the click again. So this time, last time we had this wire here was lighting up, and it's not now. So in theory, one of these other, whoops, there, got away from me. Should be able to check this center one and have power on it, and then we do. And normally I would check this last one for ground, but seeing how when I was jumping the relay out earlier, my fuse blew, I know there's a ground going there, so I shouldn't have to worry about that. So the diagnosis is a shorted out cooling fan motor, and it needs to be replaced along with the cooling fan 2-speed resistor right here. I would replace that regardless. It probably comes as part of the assembly, and then once all that is fixed, we can move on to working on the compressor. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute after I button these other things up. Well, I've got a short in the cooling fan, and right here I see where somebody's been messing with the wires, so I'm going to have to open that up and see what it is, get it straightened out, and then check everything else out separately. Well, that looks pretty terrible so far, but I don't think that's going to be the short that was blowing my fuse, because I only see one wire exposed. Let's see if I can get it pulled out and do some testing from there. Pulling it out may be a little bit harder than it looks. There you go. I never understand why people want to cut things so darn close when they try to splice things in or do things stupid. Just makes life more difficult for those of us that know what we're doing. Oh well, let me get a jump pack and a power and ground source, and we'll touch this thing and see if the short is there or not. Well, the fan does come on, but turns awful slow. And the wire gets warm. We've blown our fuse. I was wondering why that coolant fan relay was acting kind of strange. Looks like somebody kind of dicked around with it until they just thoroughly screwed it up. Oh my lord, people. What are you going to do with them? In case you don't understand what's going on there, that's copper tab with the little round circle on it is supposed to be pointing straight down, and this is what's called the armature. When this coil is energized, it snaps this armature closed and closes the contacts. I can see doing something like that if you got nothing to work with and you're in the middle of nowhere, just to get, and you know the fan is okay but the relay's bad. I can see doing that. But as soon as you get to civilization, you got to buy the right part and fix it. But I got a feeling the used car lot is going to take it from here, and they will change the parts out and charge it up, and I won't get to see this one all the way through, but I'll keep up with them and find out if they have any more problems. For the time being, this is Sparky out.